Chapter 21, The Old Stomping Ground. Since my rivals failed to lay me to rest in Crip martyrdom, I knew I'd be back in commission sooner or later. For a while I traveled throughout Compton, feeding my ego with night rage that felt ridiculous as I limped away after each dirty deed. Terrible T and Godfather enjoyed the action, but for me the thrill was gone. I was the walking wounded, unable to perform the simplest of movements with my crippled legs. I was tormented by thoughts of never being able to smash the so-called death squad, haunted by feelings of inadequacy. Returning the favor, Lex, Italian to style, was something I needed and wanted. This was 1977. I was comfortable enough to be out driving alone, though I was packing heat for potential trouble. I drove a souped up 440, a green Charger, with thick racing tires and phenomenal speed. It wasn't the speed car racer type, but to compensate for limited movement, a muscle car wasn't bad. I could often be seen flying down the block with some undercover car trailing me in the distance. I'm sure they followed us when Jamel and I tried our hand at becoming professional bodybuilders with the Joe Weider establishment. A photographer arranged to take some photos of us at Santa Monica Beach. My employer's son, Fred, was also at the photo shoot, and he thought everything was turning out well. I don't know about Jamel, but I was embarrassed to be posing in a pair of tight, tiny trunks I called bikini panties. I wore my robe for dear life up until the very last second it was time for me to pose. After the photographer finished, he assured me that I was a shoe-in for the becoming of an upcoming bodybuilder After the photographer finished, he assured me that I was a shoe-in for becoming an upcoming bodybuilder and that I resembled the former Mr. Olympia, Sergio Oliva. But who's to say he didn't tell Jamil that he resembled Dave Draper or somebody? A few days later, the photographer said they were impressed with my physique, but I couldn't be accepted because of the rumor that I was the leader of the biggest gang in Los Angeles and would bring bad press. Jamel didn't fare any better. Though I couldn't prove it, I suspected it was the cops trailing me that foiled my plans. I was disappointed but accustomed to calamity. Next. Back at the slaughterhouse, I was confronted by a problem involving a 14-year-old named Creeper from the boys' home who claimed he was a bounty hunter. He had been arrested for armed robbery. At the police station, he allegedly told the detectives he had been pulling robberies, then bringing half the loot to me. Later, I was told the cops had coerced Creeper into fabricating the robbery story. The lies stunned me, but the cold part was that Shaw believed it. The years of outstanding service meant absolutely nothing, and I was fired. But being fired felt more like a relief. I was being freed from having to live a double life. Cripping night and day now could be the only way. I packed my weights and other belongings, left Compton, and headed for the west side, my old stomping ground. I went straight to my stepfather's house on 69th. Across the street in the duplex lived my stepsister Vicky and her children, Bebe and Kameshi. They were planning to move to San Pedro. Although I had no idea as to what I would do to maintain a steady cash flow, I agreed to take over the rent after they moved. But instead of looking for a job, I was out in the street reestablishing old ties with homeboys I hadn't seen in years. Much had changed on the west side. Quite a few Crips had been killed and imprisoned, and there was a new breed of young Crips, anxious to make names for themselves. They were also dying fast. The ultimate platform then for attention was Centinela, the park of all parks. It used to be the favorite hangout for the Inglewood family gang, but the mass migration of Crips from all over the city changed the tenor of the park without a single battle. For Crips, local families and children, Centinela was probably the safest park in America. Other than me or some other Crip knocking out an unfriendly guest here and there, the park was peaceful. Both Jamel and I used to stroll throughout the spacious park in overalls, shirtless, wearing powerlifting belts. Under the sun, our muscles sparkled with baby oil. Fascinated women and wide-eyed children would ask for our photographs on paper or paper plates. Local people and street celebrities mingling on the same playing field. The stage was set no matter where Jamel or I took off our shirts. Prior to breaking out, Jamel would perform his usual round of push-ups to feel pumped. One evening, we were planning to attend a concert at the Forum. Jamel and I drove iron for 2 hours at the Slater boys' home, so I offered him a shower in the back bedroom. To my surprise, he declined, stating that the water will make take away my tight. As a substitute, Jamel loaded up heavily on my Old Spice cologne, slipped into his white tailor suit, and was raring to go. Then, at the concert inside the men's room, he still did close to 200 push-ups. Though the forum was a highlight performance where we would flex for the entire audience and receive a standing ovation, nothing could beat being at the Centella Park on a bright Sunday afternoon. Family picnics, children playing, woman galore, and the sweet aromas of barbecue chicken and ribs. On Sundays, the park was swarming with Crips strolling in with their pit bulls, playing football, gambling, getting loaded, hawking females, breaking out, or just kicking back and snacking on barbecue. On one particular Sunday, I was listening to Godfather's not too subtle comments about Jamel being a joke, that nobody could stand him. Let's just blow him away and get it over with. Before I could respond, somebody hollered, "Fight!" and a crowd ran up the hill toward the parking lot. At the top of the knoll, Godfather, smirking, blurted out, "It's your doofus buddy, Jamel, about to get beat up." I headed toward the giant circle of 50 or more Crips with two combatants in the middle, Crazy Ed from Hoover and Jamel, with Raymond acting as referee. Bare knuckle street fighting had its own mystique about it. Being trained in boxing, karate, or jiu-jitsu was sometimes a liability, especially if you were expected to win. I've seen plenty of cocky boxers and karate enthusiasts get mopped up quickly. There were no limited rounds, no cut man, no water, or no ringing of a bell for a hiatus. When you fought for however long it took. Inside the gladiator circle of testosterone, anything goes. Punching, kicking, biting, cheating, spitting, kneeing, eye gouging, arm or leg breaking, cursing, and any other weaponless tactic. Though I didn't approve of Crips fighting one another, it was by far better than their killing of each other. In this brief fight, Crazy Ed was looking stylish, throwing jabs and combinations, but he made the mistake of getting too close and Jamel grabbed him. The tables quickly turned. Crazy Ed was sitting on the ground with his legs stretched out and Jamel kneeling behind him, holding him in a chokehold. Everybody stood there in a trance while an infuriated Jamel tried to choke Crazy Ed out, but Raymond and I stepped in to stop it. Though the fight had ended, a feud was brewing. Some Hoover Crips flashed their weapons ready to blast Jamel on the spot. Raymond and I talked him out of it. Later, Eastside Crip Bulldog, one of the spearheads of the Hoover Crips, told me that Jamel was very lucky. Violence was the primary Crip negotiation technique, as well as an attention-getting device. My own need for attention now had become an effort to blot out the unhealed scar of being shot down like a mangy animal in the street. In truth, being blasted had me trying to piece together a shattered ego. Flamboyance, rage, self-hate, drug stimuli, and Crip aggression had become my pillars of support. I didn't have to peruse Franz Fanton's literary works to perceive violence as a means to an end. Urban street violence had long since mutated into a common ganghood practice, introduced in similar situations. I was so permeated with self-hate, Caucasians were safe from my wrath unless they foolishly stumbled into my path. But black humanity, be aware. I was death in a tinderbox ready to explode. I was conditioned to loathe myself in all aspects of black reality. The same enemies I had repelled for years were now watching me and Jamel strolling in their territory with our shirts off. It was lunacy to be out there flexing our muscles in the midst of gang war. But that was the insolence of Crippin', do or die, can't stop, won't stop, or this Crip, fool. I still managed to hurl my body into a fray for any Crip. No Crip who knew me could deny that in a pinch. The words, "Go get Tookie," would call me forth to redress their problem. In the hood where Eastside Crips commander Little James lived on 118th Street, he and his homeboys clashed with a big, stocky, armed lunatic. When James called, I didn't hesitate to show up and confront the figure who looked every bit a lunatic. I pulled the guy to the side and he quickly started nodding his head in agreement to everything I said, like those dolls attached to a car dash whose head bounces up and down. In his mental turmoil, he understood it was in his best interest to leave little James alone. Perhaps he had recognized the slight madness in me. Little James didn't have any more problems with that guy, nor did I ever question why they didn't smash him. I knew they could. It was this sort of incident that made me appear bigger than life. Whether it was acting as a negotiator or an aggressor, I always managed to quell the storm or carry the day. Crips like my stepfather, Wayne, Godfather, Sweetback, Blackie, Big Marcus, Manchin, Samuel, Capone, Coleman, and a long list of others would routinely seek my assistance. Though Godfather had warned me about Jamel bringing trouble to my doorstep, I didn't mind because I never discriminated against a Crip homeboy. Once Jackie and I had finished driving iron when Jamel met up with us on the corner. He was huffing and puffing after running from his mother's apartment on Century Boulevard at about 100th Street, all the way to where we lived on 69th. Jamel complained about some youngster with several friends who had crowned him with a baseball bat, busted out his back car window, and appropriated his tape deck. The feud involved this high school guy's girlfriend who Jamel tried to hit on and who rejected his advances. When I arrived, Jamel's car parked in the back of the apartments had been vandalized. I talked with the youngster's father, who had his son return the tape player and agreed to pay for the damages. Whether or not he followed through with the payment, I don't know, but the conflict was squashed. I relished doing the dirty work because it added to the legend of who I was. I seized every angle in life to define myself as being somebody. It didn't matter how ruthless or despicable I had to become in the realm of ganghood, as long as I was the best. Gradually, I was morphing into a combination of Buddha and Black Johnny, becoming one highly unstable character. I was back home on the west side, this time bigger and worse.